Warning, Innsmouth Hive. Keep your trip short and stay under as much shelter as you can, as inner Hive acid rainstorms will be lasting out most of this week, with last month's ice melt and fog leading to massive clouds that have just built up around the tether districts.
We are waiting out the storm courtesy of the Sump Vat rat catchers from their murder ball arena on sub-level 650. I have to say, these blocks have gotten a little bit of an upgrade since the last time we watched a match here. A little less blood.
Yeah, maybe the cushions are nicer too. Less rats.
Oh, that's no fun.
Hey, everybody's trying to get to that glacial marauder level now, you know?
Glacial marauder.
I have to tell you, Marky, the signal strength down here is also just fucking amazing. We might have to use this Vox location again. In other news, the quarterly call of four-armed rats has started, with the Arbites offering 10 credits for every 20 tails that are collected.
The actual rats, not our friendly street urchins in yellow. Think of the children. Want a big payday? The Arbites are offering 25 credits for every pair of four-armed Emperor feet you turn in this go-around. That's pretty substantial.
Considering each one has 6.
Odds are we'll see gangers out in force over the next few weeks as the blood sport,
Hey, you want to figure out who's going to get how many feet, huh?
Yeah.
I love it when they charge per foot because they have so many.
I am your host, Goblin King, guiding you through the thick, foggy, acid-choked rain of the day. And I am joined today by my co-host, Marky.
Hello.
He's got the map again. Keep giving him the map.
It's upside down.
And coming back to us today is Beast. How you been? I heard that you got lost down there in the sump for a couple of weeks, chasing after some good pieces of kit.
Got a little bit of
sump ass.
Got a little bit of sump crud lung, but I'm doing a lot better now. Definitely had my fair share of the under Hive concubines. That was good.
I was gonna say you pulling a lot of sump tens. Sump tens down there.
Sump tang. Got some of that sump tang.
Wait, sump tang or sump 10?
So sump 10.
I'm saying sump tang.
That's like a
sump 10's like an under Hive 2.
Yeah.
It's an under Hive 1. it's a top Hive 0. It's a top Hive negative 10.
It's negative.
Yeah, it's a top Hive negative 10. But beggars can't be choosers. But choosers can be murderers. So
it's true.
If they have all their digits, that's what the 10 stands for.
Yeah, that's right.
Or at least 10.
No, it's 10 together. So it's feet, toes, and teeth.
So
they got 10. You're good.
Kevin's like a sump 2.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling a lot better now. Actually, I didn't really feel that sick, truth be told. It was just one of those where you're locked up.
Yeah,
and the amount of work I've been doing too. I've been working from home the whole time too.
Yeah, man, yeah, it's rough right now. Well, we're going to jump into part 3 of the Skjaldmaer Worlds. Tom, to catch you up, we covered the planets in the system, and then we talked a little bit about the religious aspects of the culture. We're going to be jumping in or picking back up with the Sons of Lothgrimar in the Valkyrie. I'm trying to think.
This is your world, right? Your universe?
Yeah, this is my lore inside of Warhammer 40K.
I have been working on mine, by the way.
Awesome. Yeah, we're looking forward to hearing a part 2 on the Byzantine Empire. We were talking about that last episode.
I've got 90% of all the planets named. I've just named and then described. So I've got awesome. A little bit more to do, but I'm almost there.
That's cool, man. And I'm sure we'll probably do a catching up with series on everybody's lore, because I know, Mark, you've got some more orc stuff too.
I got one whole planet.
You'll get there, buddy.
There's nothing bad either about focusing, and that's probably a good creative writing spot to start on with all of this. When we're introducing lore, if we're introducing several systems or we're introducing several different planets and stuff like that, if we're talking about Crusade stuff or we're talking about our own personal lore, don't feel intimidated. You can go into just the same amount of detail, if not more detail, realistically, when you're dealing with a single planet.
Yeah.
Or less.
Say less.
Mark's like, 2 less.
But
I don't get off on going into extreme detail on a planet. I'm just more like, the planet's red and it sucks.
Yeah, you're all there's some. They got some stuff and they do some things there.
Well, because you go to like, let's say you're playing, a game with somebody. It's not very often you get to share your lore with
Yeah.
somebody that
No,
also
yeah.
cares about lore, let alone your personal lore. And then on top of that, if you're like, yeah, the pedals on these are, leather to the touch.
Well, and 9 times out of 10 too, when you do meet someone that is interested in lore, they're interested in telling you their lore.
Exactly, yeah.
You're like, oh, here's my planet. They're like, oh my god, you're into lore. Let me tell you all about mine.
Yeah, right.
And if you guys are like that are listening right now, send us your lore for our lore
Please.
stories. Or I'm sorry, Tales from the Hive segments where we read your guys' lore. Where I was trying to go to wrap up is, you can take. I took 30 pages to describe an entire subsector. Tom is taking a certain amount of time or pages or detail to describe a chunk of space. Mark is taking that amount to only focus on one planet, which allows him to develop different things. He can really focus in on where the squigs come from and why the squigs are the way they are. He can really kind of like dial down. Having 2 or 3 paragraphs of a description of a planet and all of its different animals is cool, but you can also have a 2 to 3 paragraph chunk on the blood mushroom biome.
Yeah, so I think the reason I actually really like the fact that you can build a foundation for your lore, like how Ryan and Tom have with planets and actually going into detail on the planets. So if you've ever heard of like people who read audio or people who act out audiobooks, to get into character, they'll read or they'll listen to like a sentence, or they'll have like a key sentence that activates that character like in their voice. So like if it's like I'm horrible with voices, but like if I were to make up a voice, I would listen to that voice speak my key term of like what would get me into character. So it's kind of like that. You read your lore on the planet, and you're like, oh, okay, you're getting into character of that planet. So you're not like, oh yeah, this is an ice rabbit that is on this desert planet. Right. Oh, that doesn't belong there. I mean, I'm speaking obviously in extremes here, but it gets you into character for the planet.
The good old ice sand rabbits.
of
Cracked myself up with that.
Ravekik 5 or something, probably.
Them ice sand rabbits. Those things are terrible.
Tastes like
tastes like grit.
Nobody likes going to that planet because there's sand everywhere and it's cold.
It's cold sand.
Yeah,
dude, that sounds terrible.
Cold sand.
That sounds
it is
awful.
Terrible.
One of the reasons that I get so into the weeds and so into the detail with this stuff is that I've got the dysfunction, the disease of creative writing, and I've got a place. I have to find a place to put it, and that's something that we've kind of teased out the last 2 different times, and something that if we can, I'd like to take a second to kind of address it. When you get into the discipline of creative writing, you have to treat it like any other discipline, any other muscle that you're trying to focus on, essentially, if I can use that allegory. So if you're going to go to the gym and focus on, leg day, and then the very next day you're going to focus on arms, and then you're going to do like a cardio, you're going to build this ritual of activity around what you're doing. You have to treat art, illustration, painting, or Warhammer models, creative writing, you have to treat it with the same kind of reverence. You have to give it an amount of time, and you have to focus on it as a discipline. It becomes kind of like a daily ritual or a daily task, which allows you to expand and build. And the reason that I put a lot of focus into developing worlds is because, and this isn't something that we've necessarily talked about on the podcast, but when I wanted to get into podcasting originally, when I produced my first podcast, which was called Between Two GMs, the entire idea of that podcast was, why do humans tell stories and why do humans play games? And those are very important to our development as a civilization and as advanced society, because we pass knowledge on through storytelling, and we pass knowledge on teaching on through playing games. And in the last 20 to 50 years, I would say, the idea of gamer has gone through weird cycles. The word game is used in a lot of negative connotation. Oh, you're a dirty gamer. He's just playing the game. He's got more game. He's gaming that girl. he's got to give up the game. Nobody ever really talks about the fact that we have this structure of gaming because we use it as a teaching tool. It's not a negative connotation. It's not supposed to pick up all of these kind of like negative mentalities. You know, somebody doesn't say gamer or player in positive connotations anymore because of the way that we kind of look at these teaching tools. But if you go into a classroom, and Marky, you've got children, so this obviously will strike a chord. You go into a classroom and that's what happens. It's a game. It's a reward system. We're going to give you a certain amount of information and then we're going to reward you with achievements, grades.
Yeah. I mean, they're playing literal games in like their classrooms that are being used as teaching tools. I know I don't want to say when I was growing up, but as I was progressing through school and computers were becoming more prominent, they actually had like, you know, I'm sure you guys remember like the math game or whatever, where you would do like 2 + 2 game. And exactly. Frogger. Or the typing game. Yeah, it wasn't Frogger.
No. But like that game where it's like, you know, it's addition and then the frog moves out of the way, you know?
Right. Yeah.
Typing of the Dead was the one that I remember. You had to type fast enough to shoot the zombies.
Dude, I think mine was like Math Blaster or something like that. You would control a little guy, and like if you were going to shoot your gun, you'd have to do a math problem to, you know, shoot the bad guy.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess that was a very interesting time to be in school.
Well, I was going to say, I think Typing of the Dead came out when I was in college. It's just the one that I remember the most because I played it like within 20 years. There was other stuff that I hazily wrote. I think Qbert had a math one where like in order to move your Qbert thing, you had to answer math problems. But I'm talking like 3.5 physical floppy disk Apple II era.
Yeah. And it like, I know how you kind of mentioned like there's a negative connotation of being like a gamer, or the word game or gaming, because even you mentioning it right now, like talking about it being in school, I almost kind of had like a negative feeling towards it, like, oh, gaming in school. But I think it's more of like gaming. My idea of gaming is different than what gaming should be in school. You know, when I played games in school, it was like my Game Boy Color.
Yeah. So there's definitely a difference between whatever you want to call it, competitive gaming or esports gaming, or gaming that's set aside for recreation, and then gaming as a teaching tool. But in general, games are developed and designed in a way that focuses you on creative problem solving. So even if you're playing Zelda or Pokemon, you're given a task and you're given a certain number of hurdles, and you have to creatively problem solve your way out of it. And you have to do that with two things that are very important for learning and for teaching. First is the scientific method. So you're going to test a bunch of things and get a result. And the second is that you're tracking analytical data.
A game manual.
Or you're cheating.
I'm just kidding.
But even when you're doing that, you're learning what the input is and what the desired, which is part of the scientific method. And it's how it's framed. You know, obviously Call of Duty 5 Modern Wombats is not a teaching tool because it's a very specific type of game that's developed for somebody who already is a gamer and already understands how game systems work. But when you're 10 or 9 and you're picking up Link's Awakening for the first time, and you have to understand what the big given trait of the game mechanics are and how they work, you're learning something. You're learning an analytical skill. You're learning map. Not that this helped Mark, but you're learning map memorization. You're learning all these different little tiny skills. And I think that's really important. And, you know, when it comes to games that we've passed down generationally, there's I think it's called Morocco or Moroccan, or you move the little glass beads or the pebbles through the board. It's an African game. You guys know what I'm talking about?
Mancala.
That's it.
If it's Mancala or it's
Moroccan.
chess, Moroccan. You know, chess, Mancala, hopscotch, tetherball, foursquare. There's a lot of games that we play as children that are teaching us incredibly valuable skills. And I think there's a reason that generationally those get passed down. And in my perspective, all of my, don't get hit in the face with the ball. That's the lesson.
I used to deck that ball so hard. It taught me something. All right.
But you're learning physics. You're learning.
You scare the person so bad that they think they're going to get hit by that ball because you're like,
Get really good at doing this one.
Your reaction time.
Well, I mean, the whole storytelling, with that is a huge aspect. I mean, that's what I'm doing. That's the whole reason I'm doing the Disney nights. Like the other night, I went to like a bonfire, and literally I had a bunch of people standing around listening to me as I tell a quick like clip from, my idea of like Disney and Warhammer. And I was telling him about, Beast Night and some things, and people were literally like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. What is this?" And then I told him what Warhammer was. It was like my tool to tell them about that.
Yeah.
Like a nice little segue to get to bring people in. You're like, yeah, Disney, it's cool, right? Yeah, Disney, 40K motherfucker.
I'm like, oh, the Disney story, they all die.
We use story to get to teach as well. And in gaming, we combine world building and storytelling, which is illustrated by Tom's example just a second ago with using Disney stuff to bring people into the game of Warhammer 40K. And that's always been really important to me. Why did we start sitting around fires and telling stories? Why did we start sitting around open areas and playing games with each other? Why did we start communicating in this way? And
entertainment and escapism.
I think education works into it a little bit more.
Oh, yeah, that too.
We're also in a very nice place as far as this portion of society goes. We're in a very developed place. We can enjoy this as entertainment and escapism. But why did our ancestors first start telling stories? And as an example, Night of the Living Dead, which I'm sure you guys have both seen, Romero was telling a very specific story. And he was telling a story about how people are treated in society. And then he ended the film with the only survivor, who was a black man, getting shot by the police because the police didn't trust he wasn't a zombie. So Romero is telling two important stories in there, but he's telling it through the lens of horror and through the lens of essentially pure entertainment. And if you look at a lot of entertainment for entertainment's sake, a lot of writers, everybody kind of has not an agenda, but a point that they're trying to make. They're trying to teach something. They're trying to bring something valuable to it. So is me spending a bunch of time world building for Warhammer 40K bringing anything to the story? Probably not. It's probably just a fun exercise, but it's an exercise, and it leads me to write my own science fiction universe and my own fantasy universe, where I am very much making points or trying to make points or trying to just not even necessarily make a point, but expose something from a different angle. So
it also engages like different, it presses certain questions. Like you have the two stars that are,
binary star pair.
Yeah. The binary star pattern that you have, and how it like rips planets in certain directions, and how that begs the question of like, oh, well, how does this actually, affect a planet? Then you would have to do some research on that. It's cool. I like it.
And it may not ever be useful. The fact that I did research into obscure physics that's majorly theoretical, and that I don't work in astrophysics. I work in actual like aviation physics. There's a real word for it. What do I do? I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer that makes products that have to fly. Is any of the information that I got from doing this? Probably not. But at the same time, it reinforces that you're talking about, that like scientific method, that scientific way of thinking. Always question stuff, basically. If you take anything away from why I think all of us creative write, you should always be questioning everything. You should always question your own assumptions. You should question other people's assumptions. Just put yourself in a mindset where you're always trying to chase down that thread and, constantly learn.
What Ryan's trying to say is don't trust people. People are bad.
Hey, everybody. Kevin's here.
Yeah.
Kevin, say hi.
Go fuck yourself.
Right in the middle of the episode. There you go. Kevin, you'll get a kick out of this, and everybody, as we get ready to move into our Astra Militarum series, this will be super important. I'm going to share some guard lore today. To catch you up, Kev, real quick, we've been doing the Skjaldmaer Worlds for the last 2 episodes, so this is the 3rd one.
Cool.
All right, so the Sons of Lothgrimar and the Valkyrie. The Skjaldmaer Worlds are most well known for their Imperial Guard regiments and the Questoris Imperialis House Crastus. With the exception of Castica, the capital planet, most of the subsector's worlds will never be free from the infestation of Skaven and the threats of orcs is ever present. This combined with the founding of the subsector by the Adeptus Astartes and the Adepta Sororitas has led to generations of embedded warrior culture idealism. Citizens of every world are trained from an early age to embrace the warrior lifestyle, regardless of their station in life, and most will experience an orc or Skaven raid by the time they reach adulthood. Before being reunited with the Imperium, it was much harder to keep the Xenos threat at bay, and even on Castica, a war-free life was extremely rare. Constantly beset by Skaven and orcs for generations, this bred hard citizens, and being reunited with the Imperium has proved a boon to both the subsector and the Dark Imperium is what we decided it was called. Do you guys know? So there's the Imperium and the Dark Imperium. Is there like Noctis Imperiumus or something I'm supposed to be saying?
I think it
does
like
have
some
a name.
kind of
It
whole
has
Latin term.
Yeah, it's got a whole
Imperialis
so
Nihilus.
Citrix, yeah, Nihilus. That's what it is.
Okay.
Nihilus is the one on the other side. Imperium Nihilus or Imperius Nihilus or something like that is the one on the north side of the Citrix Maledictum.
Yes.
And the main Imperium is on the south side.
We're just going to say Dark Imperium because I'm going to forget that.
Because we're a bunch of low Gothic peasants.
That's right. Whereas every citizen is not expected to have a career as a soldier, every citizen is expected to be a capable warrior. Early in their settlement of the worlds, the war criers apothecaries took the necessary steps to maintain and even grow their chapter, inducting recruits and even starting the process in the early days with a handful of neophytes and later scouts. It was much the same with the Adepta Sororitas, who took direct command and integrated into the Imperial Guard very early within the Wars of Compliance. However, the attrition of purging the Skaven and Orcs combined with the lack of Imperial reinforcements caused by the Jorgenmunder Rift came at a heavy price. Eventually, the Adeptus Astartes and the Adeptus Sororitas had been all but wiped out, their legacy remaining in the warrior culture of people and training monasteries that they had left behind. The one exception to this being House Crastus, who has also suffered heavy losses but maintained a solid core to pass on to future generations. When Freyan Castillo and her sisters were integrated into the 363rd Imperial Guard Expeditionary Force, she swiftly took steps to save both crumbling organizations, recruiting local people to fill in the holes left within the regiments so she could support the war criers as they moved to retake the rest of the subsector. The costs of war against the Skaven was too high, and even though the Imperial Creed was new to most of the people of the Skjaldmaer Worlds, available war gear was too valuable to be wasted. Citizens brought into the regiments were outfitted with the latest Cadian pattern war gear, but often encouraged to keep using their ancestral weapons, which were axes and short, wide-bodied swords. The Mechanicum under Avomanus 58 was able to repair most of the worst damage done to the war gear on his ships, as well as produce a limited amount of replacements. But with a greater attrition on human life than war gear, more recruits needed to be pulled in than could be sustained by the Imperium and mechanical stocks and production. After meditating on the Emperor's divine light for a week, Freyan came to the understanding that the local people's god, Eden, the Allfather, was just one of the Emperor's many different forms. And although these people's faith was odd, it was not in fact heresy. However, they were also not as pure as imperial citizens, nor were they worthy of becoming sisters of battle. The needs of war forced her hands, and pulling from the myths of the local populace, Freyan formed the Valkyrie Choir, inducting only the most worthy and highly trained female warriors of Castica and Eridon into her personal ranks and training regimens before passing on sisters' war gear to those who further proved their worth. Often Valkyrie's first assignments was to learn the blessings of the Emperor as she slowly reclaimed the relics from her new armor and moved them into the tombs of the fallen sisters. Women who found themselves inducted into the regiment but not into the Valkyrie took to using the title Shield Maidens, many of them acting directly or in close concert with the Valkyrie on the field of battle. In much the same way that the men of the regiments took on the title the Sons of Lothgrimar, and often found their way into the thickest battle amongst the Astartes of the war criers. So these are, if I were to field the Valkyrie as a fighting force, I would specifically remove the majority of the sisters' specific iconography and replace it with Imperial Guard iconography. So the idea
with that,
is
little spindle thingy with the little three-prong
Fer-de-Lys.
Fer-de-Lys.
Yeah, the little fleur-de-lis thing, that's definitely the sisters kind of trademark logo. And,
That's like the Aquila essentially on like a Marine.
And a lot of times
for
they'll
guard, it's the winged skull.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And a lot of times they'll also have like little reliquaries. They're like little boxes holding a skull or a candle or whatever.
Oh yeah,
So
like
those,
little dangling baubles. Yeah.
Those would be removed as well. So is from a Sisters of Battle perspective, the Sisters of Battle carry the relics of fallen sisters into war with them. So that's offering like extra protection. And the Valkyrie are trained as Sisters of Battle, but their amount of reinforcements is too slow and the war is too heavy for them to become full sisters, but they need people in power armor with bolters. So they're like, we'll get you halfway there.
We'll get you the gear. You guys can go to school about it later.
The other little tidbit that I dropped in there is that there's a lot of heavy integration with these. So the Valkyrie are massively integrated with what's left of the Sisters of Battle, very like middle purge war compliance. And the Imperial Guard is heavily integrated with the War Criers about the same time. So this is not the stereotypical, like the Guard are holding an area and Space Marines might show up. There might be an Astartes standing on top of a hill, like firing one-handed with a bolter, and a guardsman might be right next to him, fucking burying his axe into a Skaven's neck. These guys are working next to each other, like Horus Heresy, Siege of Terra level integration.
Interspersed to sport of Space Marines among the legions. Yeah.
You guys have any questions so far?
No, it sounds dope. I like it.
I like it.
So you're go ahead.
I always, when you said that, it always brings me back to this like piece of art that I always thought was really cool. And it was like a Imperial Fist Terminator holding up a bulkhead door, and there's a guardsman taking cover behind it, and then the Space Marine shooting in another direction.
Oh yeah. I love all of that. There's a lot of it in the Horus Heresy, but the original Horus Heresy book, which is an art book that's like that thick. There's a lot of art like that in there. And I probably was a little inspired because I read that whole thing. I love that book. The book's amazing.
Yeah.
You've been talking to Thorfinn about this stuff?
Not yet. But one of the reasons I was like, I'm going to go ahead and share it is because he keeps asking me questions and I'm like, dude, I'm just going to share all my lore. You'll dig it. He's like the first 2 episodes. He's already sent me a bunch of messages. So
nice.
Marky, did you have a question?
I forgot it.
It's cool. It'll come up again. Right. So over many generations, the influences of the Sororitas and the Adeptus Astartes have been fully integrated into the regiment. The original roots deep, but often hidden to those who don't know where to look. The Valkyrie Choir is now simply the Valkyrie and no longer acts in direct command roles, but serves as elite and specialized troops used by the company commanders. The regiment is known by the name of the Sons of Lothgrimar, although the force is still heavily mixed with both men and women of the Skjaldmaer Worlds. Veterans will often use the archaic title Light Shield Maiden, but as an informal honorific, not as a position. Some other remnants of the Old Force organization still exist, most notably the highest rank of the regiment or its planetary defense force counterpart is still High Valkyrie or War Captain. Their standard war gear is still mostly similar to old Arcadian patterns. However, bolt weapons and axes are very common throughout the troops. So I don't think I described it really well, but all veterans will use the title Shield Maiden. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. If you're veteran statused enough, they might use the term Shield Maiden to cover who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Or Shieldman or something.
Shield Master.
Yeah, it would just kind of depend. The other thing is the Valkyrie Choir no longer exists, and Valkyrie are now just the most heavily armed people. So I had 2 ideas on how to field this. One would be mixing Sisters of Battle into an Imperial Guard army, and or the Valkyrie are just my version of and I totally fucking lost what they're called, Scions.
That's what I was actually about to say. Is it your version of Casterkin or Scions?
Yep. Basically,
that's your stormtrooper best of the best.
Yep, the heavier people.
That's really cool. I like that.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Thanks. The Sons of Lothgrimar are used by the Imperium and integrated into other Imperial regiments as shock troops. Their training making them fierce warriors who don't shy from close quarters combat. They have quickly proven their value in these trying times as assets to close galactic neighbors and even across other battlefields of the Dark Imperium. Although often seen as strange and incredibly savage, their values are close enough to that they have been embraced as long-lost brothers by most. They are boisterous in nature, which can even offend other guardsmen. As an example, where getting caught cheating at cards in another regiment might result in a fist fight, Sons of Glothgrimar might strip to their waist, pull their axes, and fight until first blood is drawn on the upper torso, regardless of whether or not they are male or female. A fight also normally ends the entire dispute. Grudges and grievances are completely left at the wayside, and it can be very off-putting to watch a pair that it was just fighting, clapping one another on the back, and then sharing drinks as family. They do not fit into the polite imperial society, and more than once they have been compared to feral humans, ogrins, and even orcs by members of imperial nobility.
I like it.
Sounds like they're jealous.
You've always, when you talk about, in my opinion, this is just a writing rule from me. You've got to be very careful about how Mary Sue you make your characters. There always has to be something, if you're really good, savage, close combat fighters, there's a trade-off. In this case, that trade-off is they're feared, which means that they have some respect. They are not respected for their culture. Yeah. It's working in that little bit. And at the same time, that might mean that when I field this as an army, lorically, I'm not going to field a lot of weapons teams. I'm not going to field a lot of long range stuff.
I was going to say, so would they be like almost a little closer to like Catachan fighting style?
Yes.
Yeah, he'd play them more like Catachans with the +1 strength and all that. Like you'd play them like they're a melee build guard horde, but they look cool.
Or we get a 9th edition book and they give us rules to make our own regiment.
I hope so. You can do it now.
You don't get that. You don't get that.
You get the fuck out.
You can do it now with Psychic Awakening. There are 2 melee traits that you can combine to make a pretty nasty melee horde.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'll have to dig more into it.
I've got the book right here.
Nice.
It's I've told Mark about it. It's the combo is called Slum Lords.
Okay.
And it's 2 traits. It's the 2 regimental traits. One is Slum Fighters, which is +1 attack.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Basically. Or something like that.
I'm going to move into a little bit. Do you guys have any questions? That kind of sums up the
I might have missed it a little bit.
Quick glimpse.
How much do you guys rely on like auxilia troops, like Bolgrins, Ogrins, and like Psychers and things like that? Ratlings.
Haven't really talked about it yet.
Okay.
Ratlings wouldn't be around at all. There are abhumans in the sector. So Bolgrins would definitely be around. I don't know how they're used. But again, being that they have kind of a reputation, even the normal standard soldiers kind of have a reputation for being these like boisterous, outspoken, Ogren-headed idiots.
Yeah.
They would probably use them a little bit more than most.
They wouldn't be, and they probably get the leftovers that the noble regiments are too pure to be around. They'd probably send all the reject Ogren down to reinforce your guys' lines and stuff like that.
They would probably be shipped in. If there isn't a lot of population in the sector, they would be shipped into the sector. And the way that the culture is, if an Ogren can wade into a bunch of fucking Skaven with a double-headed axe and just fucking lay waste, they're going to be like, oh, brother. That's it. It's a warrior culture. It's not, there's not a lot of trappings for like, oh, how were you born? Even we talked about my night house in brief last time, but even my night house, they earned their shit. They weren't given their shit.
Right.
So there's a little bit, and this is all my way of playing with actual Viking culture and translating it into 40K rather than fanciful or more fanciful. I'm making my own fancy, but instead of starting with fancy and making fancier, I started with history and made fancy.
Yeah.
The 636th Expeditionary Force. They were dispatched to reestablish contact with the subsector Epsilon 885 Zeta Zeta, just to the galactic north of the Gothic sector. The 636th Expeditionary Force was a mix of Imperial and Mechanicum forces. E885-CX had been known to have 2 major forge worlds, and contact had been disrupted during the Age of Apostasy. But as the wars continued to burn across the galaxy, those lost forges and the potential for lost technology was needed more than ever. In order to ensure that the worlds of E885-CX could be brought back to the light of the Imperial Creed, a combined force was sent with the capabilities of bringing compliance to any wayward, heretical, or possibly Xenos and demon-infested colonies that might need to be dealt with. To ensure this, a veteran 4th founding chapter was given command of the 636 Expeditionary Force. The Warcrier Space Marine chapter, under the direct command of Chapter Master Lothgrimor Doranson, were given operational command of the expedition. Under Lothgrimar's command were Imperial Guard forces, including 6 regiments of roughly 15,000 guardsmen of the Bautarian Guard, under the command of Lord Commander Maximilian Havis. Attached to deal with the potential heresy and charged with bringing the Imperial Creed to any lost souls found was the Adapta Sororitas Preceptory, the Order of the Maiden's Kiss. They fell under the direct command of Canoness Preceptor Ivana Roshan and consisted of close to 1,500 sisters and with an additional 1,500 crusaders and attendants. Aside from the Mechanicum forces attached directly to various parts of the combined battle group, Forge Lord Avamamis 58 held in reserve an additional 5,000 Skitarii troops and 2 Warhound Titans. Lastly, a token force of Knights in Exile made up of 146 knights and their combined men-at-arms forces, approximately 16,000, were attached to the expedition undergoing various trials of ordeal and fell under Lothgrimar's direct command. After a relatively smooth trip to E885-CX cataloged coordinates, the 636th came across the warp phenomenon known as Jormungandr Rift, so named for its resemblance to a giant serpent trying to eat its own tail when viewed from above or below the galactic elliptical plane. Chapter Master Lothgrimar sent a Vox relay back through the battle fleet Gothic to inform them of his intent to thread the needle between the warp storm's head and tail. After several weeks of studying the passage and gathering astronomical information, Forge Lord Avamamis 58's tech priests announced they had devised a safe method to pass through the storm. With a final Vox message and a returned request to expedite the compliance of the region from Battlefleet Gothic Command, the 636 Expeditionary Force vanished from Imperial records until 999.m41. So this was in M30 something. As a reminder,
who was the Ivana what?
38.
Ivana Humpalot?
Ivana Roshan.
Ivana Rochambeau.
So the War Criers Space Marine chapter. The War Criers are a successor chapter of an unknown legion and were part of the 4th founding, specializing in close quarters combat, including a melee emphasis on using axes and short swords over the more standard chain weapons of the Adaptus Astartes. Their smaller bolter and bolt guns were able to chamber bolts used in the small and often brutal fighting done corridor to corridor when boarding an enemy ship or bringing a renegade Hive world to compliance. A reliance on non-chain weapons also acted to minimize collateral damage used when defending or reclaiming spacecraft. The Warcriers notably excelled in campaigns against the orcs and abhuman renegade mutants. Lost to the vast, dusty, and sometimes empty echoing halls of Imperial record, it is often assumed by their tactics and fighting style that they are a successor of either the White Scars or the Space Wolves gene seed, although it has been whispered that they may have been founded by the High Lords of Terra in secret, closer to the 2nd founding, within used but untainted Terran-based Luna Wolves gene seed. This, however, is extremely unlikely. I like playing with the idea that no one knows where they came from and there's lots of rumor around it. I do not like the idea of loyalist chapters that used traitor gene seed. I think you've got to play with that loosely, and it's always got to be a rumor. There's something about their tactics that speak of Abaddon, so people are like, oh, maybe they're Luna Wolves, but other people are like, there's no way they would have used Luna Wolves gene seed. There's no way.
It's kind of like the whole the Blood Ravens from Dawn of War, because they're, you know, the whole thing was, oh shit, what chapter are we actually from? We were supposed to be blood angels, then we were like, oh shit, our relics aren't blood angel relics, these are like chaos relics. That's weird. How did that happen?
Yeah, you got to be, even from an official GW standpoint, when they're really fast and loose about that stuff, it kind of aggravates me. And the reason that it aggravates me is that chaos stuff carries a taint because chaos focuses on it. So you got to be, you know, if the High Lords of Terra did found the Warcriers during the 2nd founding against Reboot's rules, and they are based on Luna's Wolves gene seed. That means if that ever comes to light, the Ultramarines are going to go and fucking exterminate
and murder all of them. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, aren't they?
Yeah, it wouldn't be that hard. We talked about it last episode, but there's only there's only what 14 or 15 of them left alive.
15 because of the there's 13 dreads, the tech marine or the forge master.
Yeah, there's the forge master,
master of the forge.
There's a venerable dreadnought, and then there's 13 other dreadnoughts.
That's
basically.
It's kind of like, did any of you guys read the Soul Drinkers stories?
I've read some of the like lore drops. I haven't read any of the books.
That's the one where they thought they were Imperial Fists. They were like, no, we're Sons of Dorn. I promise, we're Sons of Dorn. He was our gene father, you know. And they went around. They fight like Imperial Fists. They do all this other stuff. But they ended up getting shitty end of the stick, had to make a deal with a demon, you know, all that kind of stuff for chapter relics and things like that to get them back. And then it turns out they weren't Imperial Fists.
Were they Iron Warriors?
I'm trying to remember exactly who it was, but they ended up getting captured after this whole long, you know, arduous thing against Necrons and teaming up with actual loyalists and things.
Right.
And then at the end of it, they come out of this like Necron tomb that they had just blown up, and then there's this huge epic duel. Sarpedon loses spectacularly, you know. They take, but honorably, you know, he doesn't get killed in the duel. He says, "Okay, I'm in a duel for our fate. If we win, you let us go. If not, then we submit to your trial." They put them on trial on the Phalanx after he gets wrecked, and then it turns out they do a bunch of research. It turns out the chaplain was being whispered to by Sneech and like all this other stuff. So it was corrupted from within. It turns out they were a Chaos chapter all along, but they didn't even know. They even thought they were loyalists. They're like, no, we're loyalists.
You're like, what do you mean? We're totally
What do you
loyal.
mean? Yeah. And so, you know, at the end, it's some crazy bullshit happens, and they end up like sacrificing themselves to kill a bunch of Chaos people because they actually are loyalists. You know, they're shocked and appalled that their gene seed wasn't from Dorn.
Yeah. And I like the idea of playing with the idea that the gene seed could be from an untainted whatever, but you have to treat them. There always has to be that trade-off. And the trade-off here is if I were to decide that they're Luna Wolves gene seed, those 15, that's it. I'll never make any more. If I decide that they're White Scars, which is the where I'm kind of leaning, yeah, sure. I'll totally make a Primaris version.
Yeah.
All right. So Warcrier armor was painted in the off-white cream of bone with the chapter heraldry of a black skull bearing a white handprint over the eye sockets and nose on the left pauldron. Warcriers used solid green-blue helmets to identify sergeants, solid dark red, almost black for veterans, dark black bars over the eyes of the green-blue helmets for veteran sergeants. Gold accents were added for lieutenants. Commanding officers such as captains returning to the solid off-white armor with gold accents only. The Terminators of 1st Company and 5th Company, as well as the Warcriers dreadnoughts, are painted in the inverse, their base being blue-green armor with off-white and then black-red accents. At the time of their disappearance, the Warcriers chapter numbered 1,628 active battle brothers. Of those, 38 were entombed in dreadnought power armor, and the chapter at whole was supported by an additional 46 tech marines serving in various companies across the chapter. 8 companies of scouts were on record, awaiting the last of their gene seed enhancements. The chapter, which was fleet base, also traveled with no less than 3,000 support serfs and aspirants. So a chapter is supposed to be 1,000 active battle brothers. If you're gonna play with the idea of doing more or less, you have to tease out a reason as to why there's more. And I tried to do that a little bit here. Obviously, these guys are fleet based, so they were fleet based. So at the time, they were not going to have a lot of chance to go to their fortress monastery and recoup numbers if they had to. They're going to probably have Marines on loan to several different chapters that they may not be considering part of their numbers until they come back. But when they're collected, yeah, exactly. That'd actually be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should do that, Mark.
Yeah, there's totally only 13 of us Just kidding. There's like 1,000 of us in the Death Watch.
that'd be pretty funny.
There was 1,000 of you in the Death Watch.
What happened? What happened to all those guys?
So in
Black Shields.
Marky and I talked about it first. I think in the first episode, they became their fortress monastery ended up being on Castica in the capital city of Rithmir. So they ended up becoming non-fleet based because they couldn't travel anymore. They were stuck. They had a big job to do. And that's another thing. When you come up with, I think it's cool when you come up with your own chapter, if your chapter has a reason that the Imperium founded them or that they sent them to do something. These guys were known for retaking spacecraft and retaking worlds where lots of stuff was. So the Imperium was like, great, we have a job for you. You need to go find these old Forge Worlds. We know these Forge Worlds existed. We know they have STCs. Go get them. We need them now.
Tactical acquisition.
That's right. So the Batarian Guard. Hailing from the Batarian system, the Batarian Guard utilized standard pattern war gear and closely followed Imperial standard training and tactics. The only deviation in their training regime being a shift to accommodate their preferred use of hand axes and large two-handed bearded axes. Having fully embraced the ancestral tools and weapons passed down from their original human settlers to their system. Some of them had even shifted to using lesser-known STC constructs which produced attached axe heads for use in place of standard bayonets. This is actually a thing from old lore, by the way. Early in M34, the Batarian Guard had distinguished themselves in service of the Empire through campaigns against Orcs and Eldar, being used largely in deployments where close-quarter combat required a less rigid and disciplined approach and instead embraced the brutality of troops that were willing to plunge directly into close-quarter and melee combat. Batarian itself was a world in transition between the less populated Agri and the more populated civilized classification, with only a few population centers large enough to be considered cities ruling over a still relatively underdeveloped and natural planet. The planet's technology level was held in an odd mix of postmodern and early industrial eras, with late Iron Age weapons like axes and swords existing next to pre-bolter automatic weapons and even early las weapon technology. Most notably, the single-shot Batarian plasma bolt thrower, which can still be found in some collections of the Imperial's elite. However, the world's further development was held in check by the noble knight household of Castus, which ruled over the population with a heavy hand of fascist totalitarian regime. Fuck totalitarian. That is not a real word that I have ever said.
Totalitarian.
So the bolter that you're talking about, is it a special bolter or a special shell?
So it is a Batarian plasma bolt thrower. So instead of being a plasma gun, here was my mindset. It's the hand cranked las musket from Fallout 4, except it fires a plasma bolt.
Okay.
So you basically put a bolt in, you put like
it's like a plasma grenade crossbow.
Yeah, essentially. It's
that's like how I'm picturing it.
Yeah. It's the Wookiees gun.
Bowcaster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the bowcaster.
Yeah.
The Wookiees gun. What is his fucking name? Chewbacca.
Well, that's just a typical Wookiee weapon in general, though. So.
Yeah. Household Castus often stoked the fires of various families and bloodlines to start feuds among their serfs in order to control the population and disrupt or even destroy certain technological advances. House Castus ruled from a 175 million acre province of the planet, entirely walled off from its surroundings. The inner grounds kept much more like a pleasure world. At its center was the fortress city of Castisis, where Baron Monkovic, the bloody-handed Castus, and his dynasty ruled the system as the noble bloodline of imperial governors. The Baron's rule lasted for well over 500 years, his body kept alive by his own Mechanicum allies, and he was succeeded by the dynasty of Monkovics, who did little to erase or even appease his former reputation. It was under his 500-year rule that much of House Castus and the Batarian Guard was formed into the organization that saw service in the Imperium from M34 to M40, when the entire system fell silent. The bulk of the system's population, however, came from Batarian 7, the system's gas giant in Forge World. At close to twice the size of Terran's cousin Jupiter, the world was dotted with close to 100 hive cities with hundreds of manufactorum platforms and 2 low-orbit shipyards. The world's population lived in giant hives which hung upside down from the large artificial islands that were in orbit in the upper atmosphere. These islands were artifacts of the dark age of technology, and the science behind their origins were lost to even the Mechanicum tech priests who were in charge of maintaining them. The lower reaches of these islands contained the widest base levels of these cities, which then extended down toward the densely rich rare earth and diamond core of the gas giant. Unlike most hives, with these, the lower one traveled towards the core, the smaller each level becomes, tapering further until they are joined with a massive Mechanicum tether. These tethers disappear even lower into the thick soup of polluted fog and smog that is forever trapped near the core. Unlike most hives, the lowest several levels were held in complete control of the Mechanicum, as they were directly connected to the forge and manufactorums which encircle the planet's diamond core itself. Down in these levels, the Mechanicum rules with a fascist impunity, enslaving the poorest of the hive's population into menial tasks and labors while eradicating any of the gangers that strayed too far into their territory. The hive gangers of Batarian 7 stayed mostly confined to the center of the mid-levels, where the Mechanicum and Imperium had little reason or desire to exert their will. The tethers from these lower levels acted as umbilicals to the Mechanicum complexes below. These were built into massive kilometer-wide interlocking and interweaving rings of steel and plascrete, which almost fully encase the super-dense core of the world. Batorian 7's core is composed of rare earth metals, as well as diamond and other lattice or crystalline minerals. These elements confined and created in a pressure cooker of the planet's gravity into super-dense deposits and veins. The crushing pressure of the world's core, meaning only the largest of Ogrins, Squats, and other abhumans could be used alongside ancient machine spirit-driven mining machines and specially created servitors to mine these deposits. The Mechanicum created these servitors by utilizing the system's large penal population, as well as recruiting from the world's worst hive gangs, creating lobotomized monstrosities almost exclusively used to transport raw material. The majority of the hive's mid and low levels were given over entirely to manufacturing goods and processing materials through the Imperium, which were then transported to the upper atmosphere via a system of elevators, some that are truly titanic in size. The upper levels, extremely large in area and devoid of the classic noble houses, were used for construction and maintenance of the Imperium's various war machines, up to and including some night patterns utilized by the Quaestorus Imperialis and House Castus specifically. Several hundred anti-grav Mechanicum platforms also dotted the upper atmosphere, each 20 stories thick and roughly 100 square acres in area. Their bottom 8 levels containing tall embarkation decks used for shipping and receiving goods from the hives, and their upper levels used for storage and final preparation of goods. From here, goods were sent to shipyards in low orbit or off-world for the Imperium at large. Those closest to hives linked by wide bridges or causeways, giving easy access to the upper hive levels, as well as the noble houses and Mechanicum houses, which existed on floating islands above their surfaces. These surfaces of the platforms themselves were used as training grounds for planetary defense forces and guard regiments, whose training facilities and regimental grounds were organized to share final preparation areas and platform elevators by the Mechanicum. The noble houses of Batarian 7 lived among the pastoral lands that made up the surface of other ancient floating platforms, which were completely designed to act as supports to the hive platforms. So there's the hive platform, which is an old piece of technology which extends down, and then there's these like tethers that go out to like floating islands.
Yeah, I actually really, really like that concept. I think that's a really cool, like just visual imagery.
I want to do something different, man.
Yeah, I always thought it was really cool. There's one thing in the Horus Heresy where there's a Space Marine fortress built upside down, like inside of like an asteroid or something.
Oh, that's crazy.
And so when the Chaos Marines had to attack it, there's nowhere to land because it's upside down.
Oh shit. Okay.
There's no landing pads on you can't just like land on the roof of an upside down castle.
Right. Right.
So like they came in and they had to like, come in and try to like board it sideways, and it's upside down, and it was just Yeah, how are you going to attack an upside down castle?
The way that I did these, they're like the tops are like space. They're each like spaceports, though.
Yeah, I
So
imagine
like that
it is
you can land
like
on. But I like that whole idea of like you have to fly through all these guns to get. Like if you think about it, you have to fly through all of these guns to get to it.
Yeah, exactly. So like what you're describing is kind of like the same idea, but combined with what's known as an aerosat platform, which is a crazy sci-fi concept. It's going to blow Mark's mind. Imagine if you were to build a giant like platform and then just float it around above the surface of the planet as like a floating continent, like an island made of metal just floating above a planet.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like, did you ever play BioShock Infinite?
No.
Okay, that's the one with the big floating city in the sky.
Yeah, so what I was thinking, Ryan, have you ever watched Alita, Battle Angel?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that definitely.
That's kind of
the big floating city, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of where my mind went. Or even, what is it, Altered Carbon?
Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of have
everybody
there's no
lives up in the
tethers.
clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's no
they just have the big
tethers there,
floating
but-
city. Yeah, but it's the same idea. Yeah, big floating. Yeah,
I
separate
also-
from everybody else, but then tethered to things is cool. I like that idea.
I also like the idea that this entire planet relied on like technology that nobody understood. So
right?
like these
It was
tech
like,
priests
oh,
are-
cool.
These tech
Look what
priests
we
are like,
found.
oh shit, this area just ran out of power. We should fix that. Well, why? Well, that might be what keeps these in the air. Okay, and then they'll fix it, and then like that. But just imagine.
They're like, well,
at a
I
certain
hope
point,
so.
if enough things break, these things would just fucking get pulled into the center. The noble houses of Bautarian 7 live among the pastoral lands that made up the surface of the ancient floating platforms which were used to support the hives. These lands existed at a perfect altitude, maintaining a gravity comparable to Terra itself, with a very clean and stable atmosphere, much like that of a pleasure world. The magnetosphere acting to suck the dense smogs and pollutants down into the thick and heavy soup, which choked the lower hive levels and shrouded, the mechanicum rings near the core. Atmospheric conditions made flight at this level incredibly easy and cost-effective, and the pleasure craft of the noble houses riding the edge of the upper and mid atmospheres, a lot like boats, held suspended on an ocean's surface. The Bautarian Guard were firmly tied to the more ancient traditions, with noble houses of Bautarian 7 taking up the roles as officers and leaders. More veteran troopers from House Castus and the Planetary Defense Force were often pulled in to fill in non-commissioned officers and instructors when new guard regiments were being formed. General housing for the regiments occupied the largest top floors of the hives, living just under their masters' feet. The upper atmosphere of the planet was host to a large number of lower sentient avian xenospecies, named for their similar appearance to many of the avian animals of ancient Terra. It is from these birds and their hunting tactics that the noble houses named the various standard Bautarian Guard regiments. Almost every member of the Bautarian Guard served at least 2 years on Bautarian 7, often either completing basic training and receiving specialized training as part of their rotation through the planet. Men-at-Arms of House Castus being the largest notable exception. The Bautarian system, proximity to several large and known orc populations, as well as Eldar pirate activity, saw the Guard often deployed to war zones that acted as a buffer to the system and the Imperium as a whole. These battlefields helped to fuel the large number of close combat veterans, as well as the reckless, brutal fighting style the Bautarian Guard became famous for. Bautarian and several of its neighboring systems went silent, and all contact was lost during the invasion of Hive Fleet Bahamut. As of 999.m41, no contact has come from the systems in decades. The last of the Bautarians, both the Knights of House Castus and the guard regiments that had been deployed across the Imperium, have long since vanished. The survivors either retiring, dying, or having been reformed and folded into other organizations over the last several decades. Those few veterans who can be found are easily spotted by their use of axes on the battlefield.
Hive Fleet Behemoth, huh?
Yep.
I need to
They,
get some guardsmen, and we need to print some bayonets that are axes.
It's a thing. It's from.
I remember it being a
older-
thing a long time ago.
Yeah, it's from an older
I think
edition.
it's a really old artwork, really, is like what it came from. I think it was
Yeah.
like they had
But-
it was like a feudal world guardsman like art for it. And it was like a guardsman, but he also had like chainmail and stuff on.
And I
it's-
remember the little like snippet underneath it being like, some STCs hold more archaic patterns. And like,
right?
it's
It was
stuck
just
in my
supposed to be
mind, and
so
I'm
like. So when are you building us a one of these platform cities as a table to fight on?
Shit.
Tom.
I just felt
That could be doable. That could totally be doable.
How cool would it be? It'd just be like an upside down triangle.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of it, we just need cotton. We need lots of cotton.
Yeah.
Oh,
Get
yeah.
rid of the clouds. Yeah.
Yep. That's all we
That's
really
awesome.
need. We can
It's
make
basically
it work.
just one piece of terrain. The whole board is basically just the one thing.
This is the top.
Yeah.
The only thing you can see is the top. And I liked playing around with the idea too. If you've got an inverted hive, obviously the people, it's still
The social structure is the
caste
same, but
system is the
inverted.
same. Yeah. So the people at the top, but then I had to be like, well, where's this guard population living? Because the entire Batarian system is feeding this one military base essentially. So all of those top levels, these huge
Are
top
also
levels,
converted from pleasure domes to farming, essentially.
yeah, and that's why they've
That's
got these
cool.
other little islands and everything. It's
Yeah,
all
they've got the auxiliary islands. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking
Oh,
about.
there you go. That's awesome. Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
I know that picture.
Yeah, exactly. I've seen that picture a bunch of times. That thing is super cool.
You got your grapes growing on stripper poles and whatnot.
Yeah.
So here's
Slide
the
that shit
last.
Ribbed for her pleasure.
So here's the last little bit. Hey, Kev, you'll enjoy this. I put a little bit of effort into how the regiment is designed. So Kev, since you missed episode
Yes.
1, and I don't know if you're caught up with it. Originally, I was planning on reforming my guard first. My original plan was not to do my Tau. No, I'm kidding. My Orcs. No, I'm kidding.
Right.
My Eldar.
Yeah, you would
do
do
my guard.
to
Yeah.
reform your guard first. And then suddenly those guard became my guard.
Yes, suddenly.
Rogue trader somehow acquired more men.
There you go.
Suddenly, conscription.
Suddenly bribery.
Standard Batarian Regimental Organization. Each regiment was approximately 15,906 guardsmen with an additional 15,000 auxiliary support and administratum staff. A further 150 officers and officio prefectus and their command staff also accompanied each. 6 full Batarian regiments were attached to the 636th Expeditionary Force with an additional 2 regiments held in reserve at approximately 2/3 of their full strength. At full strength, the 636th Expeditionary Force had 250,000 Batarian troops. Each regiment was divided into 6 divisions, with divisions being divided into 6 companies. Each company specialized in a specific combat role, with the divisions deployed to achieve overlapping battlefield support. While their force deployment isn't the most flexible at achieving quick surgical strikes, it was highly mobile and able to counter most threats. A member of the Guard would report themselves by company, division, regiment, then specialization, and unit name, if applicable. As an example, Corporal Jessica Hessek, 4th Company, Raven Division, 3rd Regiment Drop Infantry, the Screaming Blood Birds, Sir. So force organization. 1st Division, known as Crow, consists of 1st and 2nd Companies, Light Infantry, 3rd Company, Heavy Infantry, 4th and 5th Companies, Mechanized Divisions consisting of Chimera Support, Taurox Armored Personnel Carriers, and Valkyrie Transports. 6th Company, Armored Heavy Support, consisting of Super Heavy Baneblade Pattern Tanks and Lehman Russ Battle Tanks in support. 2nd Division, Raven, consisting of 1st and 2nd Companies, Drop Infantry, 3rd and 4th Companies, Veteran Drop Infantry, 5th and 6th Companies, Air Support, consisting of Valkyrie Transports and Thunderbolt Escorts.
Have you guys ever seen the skit of like the guy that like is delivering messages? I think in like World War II in the trenches, where he's running from like one like fob to another, and he's just like, "This is Private."
He has to restate his name each
Private,
time.
yeah, Private Jack of the third Regiment.
Oh, right.
4th
3rd
Division.
Regiment, 4th Division, 2nd
yeah.
Platoon,
So, yeah, 2nd
3rd
platoon's
Squad, Messenger Battalion.
Yeah, cousins twice removed, sir. It's just like, what's your message? He's just like, the general said to retreat.
Like the message is longer than his title. Yeah.
Yeah. This is the type of detail that Guard players like. This is the minutia that gets Guard players super.
This is why we play
Excited.
guard. is making up these little details and coming up with just things that have no determination on how the game is played.
Yeah.
Things that have literally zero effect on the game.
I named divisions, and there's a reporting structure, but like you would never field 6 companies on it.
No.
Well,
Right.
you might.
I do like how you have the overlapping specializations. So like if you had a initial strike force with like strong ground troops,
Right.
and then you had another one that's also another strike force but with air support, and you send both those companies in, you have overlapping, ground forces with transports and air support. It's kind of like a cool idea. I like that.
One of the things that I had in mind was the rolling barrage idea of artillery strikes from World War I, where literally the artillery would march across the battlefield, and then in the smoke behind it comes your troops. So you basically chunk everything up, and then there's people that clean up. And I liked the idea of trying to do that with modernized or postmodern weapons.
Well, and Warhammer very much has this whole thing where it's like, right, all the machine guns, you go there. All the people, you go there. All the tanks,
Right.
you go there. Like, there's no, everything's very much divided. Like,
Yeah,
like,
they separated the command structure. That was the biggest problem with the Horus Heresy, is that it fucked up tactics.
Yeah.
Because they were like, all right, nobody gets to cooperate anymore, because look what happens when you fucking cooperate.
Yeah. So 3rd division, which is the Owl division, consists of 1st and 2nd companies, which is heavy infantry accompanied by heavy weapons support teams. 3rd company is artillery, consisting of Basilisk Earthshakers, Manicore missile carriers, and colossal bombard siege mortars. That was the other thing that I got to do playing with this, is I got to look up lots of like obscure, not used on tabletop guard things.
Oh yeah, I'm surprised you didn't have a Minotaur twin Earthshaker.
So 4th company artillery consists of heavy mortars, Earthshaker platforms, Manicore platforms, and Trojan support vehicles. 5th company is artillery is Hydra flak tanks and Death Strike missile launchers. 6th company is armor, which is Lehman Russ battle tanks, Hellhound anti-personnel tanks, and 3 Lehman Russ executioners.
Sounds like a really expensive army.
Oh yeah. 4th division.
Oh yeah.
it's like
Eagle.
sponsored
And what's
by
funny
Forge World.
is a bunch of this stuff
Right.
isn't even Forge World. It's just to get this many of them.
It's just
would
old.
cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars.
Yeah.
Eagle division is pretty standard. Light 1st company, light infantry. 2nd company, heavy infantry. 3rd to 6th companies are artillery, Hydra, black tanks, Basilisk Earthshakers, Manicore missile carriers, and heavy weapons teams. Raptor division is armor. 1st company, armor, consisting of Bane blades and Lehman Russ tanks. 2nd company, armor, 12 Lehman Russ battle tanks with 48 tank crew. 3rd company, armor, 5 Chimera transports. So the 4th company is Lehman Russ demolishers, Lehman Russ annihilators, Lehman Russ punishers, and Lehman Russ main battle tanks. 5th company is battle tanks. 6th company is a Doomhammer, a Bane sword, a Bane blade, a Hellhammer, a Stormlord, and a Stormblade. Just in case you wanted to get all your Bane blades. Yeah.
So because you have all your Bane blades in one company, do they actually like send out like an auxiliary, like, okay, just the Hellhammer needs to go support 1st company right now? It's not like the entire company of Bane blades goes out in like
so they might send
group.
Yeah, they might send 5th division Raptor 6th company to support 1st division Crow.
But only a fire team, or only like a whatever
it
you
would
call
be-
a group of tanks.
Yeah, they're only going to send they're only going to send a battle group. This is everything is on the ground advancing at once to comply a system or a plan, not a system, to comply a planet. This would be everything. The one that gets borrowed from the most is 6th division, Rock division, which is 1st company is air support, 3 Marauder bombers and 9 Thunderbolts. 2nd company air support is the same. 3rd
Thunderbolts are
company
sick.
air support is 12 Lightnings. 4th and 5th companies are 10 Valkyrie transports with 20 Thunderbolts in escort, and 6th company is their ground support, which is Hydra flak cannons and Manicores.
Thunderbolts are the ones that have the jet engine like almost around the front of the cockpit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rock division would be the one that, and rock as in ROK as in giant fucking birds, They would be the division where everything would be pulled from. Like, you're not going to send
Breakneck division.
Yeah. You're going to put the air support division in support of first company, or the air support division in support of, depending on what's happening. And this wouldn't be, this is everything that was sent with Lothgrimar at their heyday, at the highest, as Kevin can tell you. There isn't going to be one of this 6 split. There's going to be like 18 of these 6 split, and they're going to be in different campaigns, different battlefields.
Okay, I got you.
Yeah, most of the time, like, so, you know, take one of the Cadian regiments, Cadian 700 and whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
You got so many of them, but one, like, you could tell because they all got different camos, but they would all be like, these guys and these guys wouldn't be fighting shoulder to shoulder with each other. These guys would have a whole section of wall to defend, and they'd do it their way. And these guys would have a whole other section of wall to defend somewhere else.
Yeah.
Completely separate. And their command would be separate, and their supports would be either utilized from a central location, and they would all borrow from those artillery, you know, when they need barrages, things like that.
And
it's kind of like,
go ahead.
I was going to say, it's kind of like when you see war movies and they're like, oh yeah, the, you know, first air cav, or, you know, they're already supporting this company over here. You guys have like a 20-minute ETA before they're cleared to, you know, refuel and come help you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I look at it very much in the like breakout of Arnhem, Market Garden, Operation Market Garden or World War II. You had, you know, basically on the first
bridge, army group.
You had you had First Army Group, which was the tanks. Then you
tanks
had
with infantry support.
Then you had 1st Battalion, I think, was the first bridge. 101st was the second bridge, and then British paratroopers, Pegasus
Commandos.
paratroopers were third bridge. You know, so like each one was its own thing.
Was its own completely separate thing, and they all were supposed to happen at the same time.
Yeah.
So that the tanks could get all the way to the commandos by the time the commandos ran out of ammo.
Yeah. and the whole reason that I went into the historical detail of what Lothgrimar had is because what the system has now is the idea of all of that stuff has been homogenized. None of these divisions exist anymore in the Sons of Lothgrimar.
Battlefield attrition.
Yeah. The Sons of Lothgrimar, in fact, if I were to field them, I wouldn't field them as Space Marines, but I would look at the way that a Space Marine chapter was organized rather than the way that an Imperial Guard regiment was organized, because Space Marines are going to live longer than the officers of an Imperial Guard regiment, especially when the officers are, as I mentioned, they're pulled from the noble houses. So, you know, the third son who really wants to be a painter all of a sudden finds himself as a general.
Well, now you're painting with enemy's blood.
And he has no training. He has no idea what he's doing. He's just given this title and he's sent off to war. That dude's
sounds pretty normal.
That dude's not. Yeah,
I was about to say that's every day for the Imperium.
That dude's not going to survive. And that troop of veterans is going to fall under, you know, probably not even a sergeant, probably just a Space Marine. Like, hey, Doug, you have to go deal with that 200 guard. Well, why? Because they don't have any officers and you're a Space Marine. Go lead them.
Figure it out.
I feel like the Imperium has kind of like a lot of the same mentality. So there's a saying, I think it's like every Marine is a rifleman or something like that. It's like every human is a guardsman.
That is exactly how the Imperium views you as two ways. You are either a soldier or you are a factory worker.
Or a conscript.
Or a servitor.
Well, that's what I mean. That's what I mean.
No, I know.
I mean, yeah, I guess if at that point you could break it down into, you could really make it 3. You either got soldiers, workers, or servitors.
Yeah.
Which are both.
They're not human, though. They don't get any rights.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, the humans aren't human. They don't get any rights either. This is the Imperium we're talking about.
And what's funny is all the shit that the Imperium does to its own people, it's not a war crime, because it's only a war crime if you do it to an enemy. By definition, it's only a war crime if it's done to an enemy in combat.
There's Mr. Inquisitor over here dropping the knowledge. Inquisitor Kevin. Hey, it's not a war crime because you are not an enemy.
Right.
We are allies.
You are one of us.
Waterboard you.
Yeah.
As I plasma board you.
Any questions?
I think that, well, it was more just a comment of like, this was a good episode for Kevin to kind of help
Oh yeah.
So like help with his knowledge, and then the knight, the
doing your knights in exile part.
What is it?
Questoris Imperialis.
Questoris. Oh, okay.
You're going Imperialis and not Mechanicum? I thought you would have gone Mechanicum.
So, and I'll get into why the Knight household was given their planet by Lothgrimar. They were awarded the planet by a Space Marine, so they're Questoris Imperialis. It also fits into how their planet works. So, Marky and I talked about this last time. The planet has a very low lifestyle, high technology feel, but instead of like Underhive, it's wilderness. So most of the planet is icebound, and there's only like pockets where volcanic activity makes it livable. And in those pockets where it's livable, there are people who have maybe I use the example of the Expanse. There's that city in the Expanse, I think in like the 6th book or something. I don't know where the series is. Where there's a research town and the lab has full power, full lights, working bathroom and all of that. But like the person who runs the lab, her house, they have an outhouse and they only have one single light bulb like for their entire house. So I kind of played with that idea of, because one, it's a night world, so the knights are controlling stuff, but also two, they have to make these deals with the Mechanicus and like trade food stuff and stuff to get supplies. The Mechanicus isn't calling on them, the Imperium is calling on them.
Have you guys ever taken a shit in the dark?
Yes.
I love doing that.
Wait.
Especially in my morning poop.
It's a real question, Mark.
Well, no. Well, like
without walls on somebody's tire.
I've taken a shit in the dark. Yeah. But like at work, you know how sometimes they have light sensors?
Oh, yeah.
The lights will go out.
You've been sitting there for so long, the lights go out.
Yeah, put on your NVGs.
Like, man, I should have stopped looking at memes like 20 minutes ago.
My legs are numb.
This is how those people live every day. So don't take it for granted, you know?
Wait, except they don't have a smartphone.
They wipe their ass with the shell too, so it's like you can't tell.
With a shell.
The seashell.
There's a diagram of how to use them at one point. I think.
He walks up to the thing and just starts cussing a bunch to grab all that.
He doesn't know how to use the seashells.
There we go. Three seashells method.
Oh, Jesus.
Let me see if there's an image here.
Dear.
Kev, you got any questions?
I've actually really enjoyed all those details that you put into that. The uniqueness of the upside down platforms. You know, that's a cool detail that a lot of people forget, that you can do stuff like that. You can take something that's so traditional and literally just turn it upside down, and it makes it completely different. Yeah, I think it's unique. It's a good way to tie a lot of things together. And then you made sure it was sufficiently grimdark enough also to like fit with it fits in 40K very well.
Yeah,
like
I don't really have a problem making my stuff dark.
Well,
sometimes I finish typing and I'm like, maybe half. Maybe let's add some.
Let's add a little cream to that.
It's too dark.
Too dark.
I like the whole idea of making something extremely happy and then just ripping it away. That I feel like
that's my favorite.
The Band-Aid. Yeah, the Band-Aid method is a little more like, not more, but like I feel like it's I guess it's kind of tropey, but. Or gimmicky, where it's like, oh yeah, that's like blatant grimdarkness versus just like the overall tone is grimdark.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, when the Skjaldmaer Worlds were initially rediscovered by the Imperium, it was a paradise utopia of the Skaven. And they just they were just living in ultimate peace. And then the Band-Aid was ripped off.
Hans, are these the bad guys?
Skaven were sipping tea with one pinky out and writing novels, and then the Imperium barged in and fucked it all up.
In full light bulb lit rooms. Technology rich society.
Technology rich.
So I wanted to point out something really quick before Tom, I'm sure you've got a couple of questions too. So I have House Crastus, which is my current knight household. Knight Castus is this more ancient. And I didn't realize, because they're spelled so differently, I didn't realize until I was reading out loud Oh, Crastus and Castus are very similar words.
I didn't want to say anything before, but I was like, I could have swore there was a night house that has that same name.
Yeah.
But it's Crastus. Yours is Castus?
Mine is Crastus. The old
Castus
one
house.
is Castus.
Okay.
So I'll probably change it to like Temptus or something. Now that
probably
I'm thinking about it. But Tom, you got any question for me?
My only thing is like you're developing an entire, basically a solar system.
Yeah, right. Well, more than that, I think. A few solar systems,
It's
right?
three
solar
systems. Three
Okay,
systems.
so it's 3 solar systems. Like obviously you've got Imperium, you've got Imperial Guard, you've got Mechanicum, you've got Night Houses. Are
Orcs, Eldar.
Space Marines? Are you trying to incorporate every single race into this, or is this just like?
Well, eventually he wants to own every army, so
That's
I think
what
it
I'm
kind
saying.
of falls
I'm
in
like,
that. Yeah.
is this the way?
Yeah. So originally the idea was that the original kernel of all of this was I wanted to make an Imperial Guard Viking army, and I wanted to make it more towards actual Norse culture and Viking culture and less towards like these are Space Wolves light.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to go back to that individual kernel and figure out like what are important things to the Norse culture. Well, one of the big important things is the people that were considered Vikings, they left their home and went somewhere else. So I had to come up with that. And then how did their culture change when they got there? And I had to come up with that. And as I started to develop it, the big thing that came out of all of this was I was like, oh, I need a bad guy and I need a good bad guy. So I pulled in the Skaven, and then it just kind of made sense for orcs to be there too. We talked about that.
He has a Skaven mafia in his lord, so it's
yeah.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's
what
my
are
dark.
They? What are the
cartels?
different cartels? Yeah, there you go.
Nice.
Cartels and criminal syndicates. And basically the Skaven figured out that they can continue living alongside Imperial society as long as they don't raid and kill too much, and they act as the black market. They're like, high human officials are incredibly corruptible. Excellent.
Yeah.
They're like, hey, they like plot, intrigue, and
Everybody
bribery as
needs
much as we do.
Everybody needs a black market.
Right.
You have to.
Yeah.
So that's all stuff we covered in episode 1. We'll cover it a little bit more. So to give you guys a taste moving forward, I have an explanation for Knights in Exile, why they exist, but we want to do Astra Militarum as a lore series first, and then I think we'll bounce back to some of Tom's Knight lore just to kind of get that those mixing of flavors.
Mm-hmm.
And then I've got an explanation.
I've also been working on it, so
Yeah.
Cool. I have an explanation of Forge Lord Avamosis 58's Skitari Legion. I have a breakdown of House Crastus, and then I get into the Skaven Vermin Horde and Grit Tooth One Tuska and the Garnesh Tangle. And
That's what I
at
wanna
that
hear.
point, we'll talk a lot about the wars that happened,
We're still on the cliffhanger of Grit Tooth and how his head
how
was
his
severed.
head got reattached to a body. Well, no, we found out how his head got severed last episode.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That the cliffhanger was that his head was severed, but he's still alive.
But he's back. He's
Isn't
back,
that
baby.
the
He died, but he's alive.
I don't want to spoil it. Isn't that the one where the grot jumped out with the head?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So in fact, it's funny. So we mentioned it, or we talked about it last episode, and just to really quickly refresh it, and then we'll wrap up here. Freyan Castillo, who I mentioned today, was an Adapta Sororitas and later general of the Expeditionary Forces under Lothgrimar. She is known for defeating a demon Skaven abomination of Khorne in single combat, as well as being the founder of the Valkyrie. She was martyred while fighting orc war boss Grittooth One Tuska as she stood on top a pile of thousands of slain orcs, cut off from her Valkyrie by a sea of greenskins, a bloody chain axe in each hand. A grot was able to slip unseen through her blind spot and plunge a dagger into her left side. His attack was perfect and slid between her armor plates and brought her to her knees, while her lifeblood pumped uselessly out of a small gap in her armor. Grittooth stalked forward and took her head with a sweep of his cleaver. He kept her body, stapling her head back into place and crucifying it as his war banner. Her body was left to mummify in her power armor for almost 70 years until Lothgrimar buried his own power axe in the war boss's chest before ripping the orc's head off of his shoulder with his forged arm. Her reclaimed relics now reside in the Temple of Eden on Freya. Her ferocity against the Skaven and later orcs earned her a place as a warrior even the Astartes looked up to in life, and a place as one of the saints of the guardsmen of the Skjaldmaer Worlds. So the reason that I wanted to bring that up really quickly is, Tom, I actually changed this lore because of you. Originally, the Grot was running away from somebody else and tripped and accidentally killed her. And you and I and we had talked about orc stuff, and you had mentioned like how dumb some of it is. And I realized that what I was doing was I was trying to be tongue in cheek and silly, but what I was actually doing was I was devaluing Freyan's abilities as a warrior by having her accidentally die. So I had to tweak it.
Yeah,
you had to make it so that it was so crazy.
It was
of a
not
fight that a Grot was able to get in there.
Yeah, so it was not dumb.
So it wasn't just this tongue-in-cheek throwaway.
Exactly. I don't say it as in dumb as in like you're stupid. I say it as in dumb as like that's a dumb luck.
Don't turn it. If you're trying to make an Imperial hero, don't turn their origin into a joke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, unless they are one.
Unless they're Kane.
Well, I mean,
unless you're Caiaphas Kane.
Yeah, like there's moments where that's acceptable, but that's not one of them.
All right,
like
guys.
Caiaphas Kane trips and blows a war boss's head off, but then he falls backwards due to the recoil and lands on a Grot's fucking ass stabber.
I played a game where I did a bayonet charge and I critically failed. So I did a bayonet charge, tripped, stabbed myself.
Real quick, in my game, I was playing Necromunda, and first game of Necromunda, and my guy's gun jammed because apparently your guns are so shitty in Necromunda that they constantly jam.
Yep.
And he was my most forward like ganger, and he like popped up, gun jammed, and like there's 4 dudes in front of him. So I was like, "Fuck it, I'm gonna charge." He failed his charge so hard that they just blew his ass away the second he came out of cover. It was hilarious.
Yeah. It's one of those like. Rolled ones on everything.
It was really bad on his part.
There used to be an old Tyranid rule where if a synapse creature died within a certain range, like the Carnifex would just turn on whatever was closest.
Oh yeah,
they would go feral or whatever.
That's also another like kind of silly issue because you just you get shitty luck, and then your Carnifex is eating your own army.
That's what Mark does to me all the time. Every time I play Jeep Steelers, he's like, I'm gonna take over your weapon and make you shoot that guy.
They took that away from us, by the way. We can talk about it later.
Oh, thank God.
Good.
Fuck you guys. I love it. I could just picture like Eric go like no.
Yeah, no, dude. What kills me, what worries me so much about it, and why I was freaking out is the Valiant with the fucking harpoon.
Oh yeah, he just turned around. He's just like,
strike 16,
fucking 10 damage. Like, there you go, plus D3 wound.
Can have some of that.
Yeah.
That is part 3 of the Skjaldmaer Worlds. We will probably touch back on the Skjaldmaer Worlds in the future. We're going to dive into Astra Militarum starting with our next episode. So we'll do some history of the Astra Militarum, and then we'll get into the culture, Acadia, Catachan.
We could go through all the ones in the books and then lightly mention kind of the all the ones, the honorable mentions that people
majors.
Talk about. Yeah. Because obviously like Krieg's not in here, but
much the same way we did the Eldar episode, we'll do some history, we'll do some how they are, and then we'll talk a little bit about how you field them and how you build an army from a hobby side.
Yeah.
If you guys have lore that you want us to share in our Tales from the Hive segment, you can share that with us at underthehiveofmadness@gmail.com or grimdarkgaming@gmail.com. Please also feel free to reach out to us through those methods and ask us any questions you may have had about this episode. Another great way to connect with us and to become a part of our growing community is to find us on Discord. We do have an active Grimdark Gaming Discord that is mostly focused on Warhammer 40K, but we do some other cool stuff there, including some Dungeons and Dragons, some trading card game stuff, and just some talking about world building and creative writing in general.
We're also on there a lot of the time, just having chats and playing video games. Easiest way to interact.
Yeah. We're pretty proud of our community, and we love interacting with everybody there.
Yeah, honestly, from starting from square one, where literally just us 4 were in this Discord, and growing up to like over 170 members, it's been one hell of a ride.
Crazy.
Yeah,
it's fun.
And those are just the people that want to talk to us.
I looked at the list of people and I was like, man, where did all these people come from?
If you guys would like to support us a little bit more directly and get involved in some of our community events, you can follow us and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. We have a couple of different tiers over there. There's a $3 tier, a $6 tier, and a $9 tier. One of the things that we do through our Discord community is a quarterly painting contest, and you can get involved in that quarterly painting contest if you are at the least the $3 Patreon tier level. The other thing that you get at the $3 Patreon tier level is a video version of this podcast that is largely unedited. We do take out literal dead spots where somebody's phone might ring or where we might degrade.
Take a shit.
Yeah. Or degrade into a coughing fit or something like that.
Leave me sitting there alone for a half hour.
Yeah, that's cool. Tom got it. He filled the entire time. It's great.
With 5 words.
We're also trying to do swag, so
yeah, we got some swag.
Be on the lookout
out
for that. We also have some art that Ryan likes to draw up and release for any wallpaper or objective marker needs.
Yeah,
and we're also looking to possibly do giveaways.
Yeah, we've got some stuff in the pipes, so definitely check out Patreon especially if you guys want to support us a little bit more directly. We're very honest and very open about what we use those funds for. We use those funds to pay off the debt of the equipment that we have purchased and to buy new equipment to make our streams and our podcast sessions better.
Certainly doesn't go into any of our pockets. That's
yeah. This is a labor of love, guys. So we love doing it and we love seeing an active community. If you guys would like to support us, but you are not at a place where you want to be involved with Patreon, a good way to do that is to like and review us on any of the podcast platforms that you have found us on. Apple reviews, those Apple ratings and reviews definitely help us stand out in the algorithm. You can now also you can also now give us a star rank through Spotify and make sure that you follow the show. If you guys want to find any of our other stuff around the wilds of the internet, we do have a link tree. As always, I put all of the direct links and the correct spellings to the stuff that we have just talked about in our show notes. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that irony smell we're getting is not from dead 4-armed rats. That's just the way that that rat catcher's boxing seats smell. I think it's a lot of blood.
Or Kevin shit himself.
I did nothing of the sort.
I had Chipotle for lunch.
There's the culprit.
Is there a Hive
Chipotle?
Hive Chipotle.
Oh, we need one.
Some Chipotle.
Some Chipotle.
Some burritos.
Oh, let me get that. That some burrito bowl.
Some burrito bowl.
Oh.
Would you like rat?
Or
rat?
Would you like grilled pipe algae?
Ratarizo.
Our vegan.
Yeah, our vegan option.
At some point, one of you guys gotta figure out the Forrest Gump, where they're talking about all the different ways to eat shrimp.
Oh,
They're fried shrimp.
Some shrimp. Yeah.
Oh, some
boiled
shrimp.
rat, fried rat, charred
boiled
rat,
fried rat, charred rat, grilled rat, rat kebab, rat gumbo.
Can you
rat
imagine
stew, rat chili?
Fucking shrimp that's living in like sump water.
Some shrimp.
Yeah, can you imagine
I imagine
that?
they're not small.
I was gonna say they gotta be like it's like the size of a catfish.
Do you imagine some
it just looks like that girl doing the video where she's like, I'm
gnarly.
a catfish.
Oh God. You don't even throw in like a bunch. You just throw one in and you just cut it up in pieces. It's like sashimi.
So
bigger than a lobster.
The nice thing about sump lobster is that when you catch one, you can feed your family for 6 months. The bad thing about a sump lobster is you need a tribe of people to track it and kill it.
Well, the really bad thing about it is the fact that it may feed you for a month, but it'll make you shit yourself to death.
But you'll be well fed.
Well fed while dying.
It's one of those
well-fed dysentery.
I was talking to somebody at work about that the other day.
You got to cork it off with sump fungus first, so that way it keeps all the nutrients in there.
Keep the cap.
Yeah, you got to cap it, and then once you pop the cap, that's when you can release it.
Like a bear going into hibernation. So you start with the grilled sump algae.
Yeah.
And you eat a bunch of that, and it just like it wads up in your intestines, you know?
Yeah, it's like a cork. It's like the the gopher before
Exactly.
before it breaks the
When it's
what the fuck
coming
do you
out
call
of
it? What's the black
surface
hole
of the
thing?
earth.
No,
The event
what's the
horizon?
plane? Yeah, it's the
Oh,
event
yeah,
horizon.
the event horizon.
The event
Yeah.
horizon.
And then you eat a bunch of sump lobster.
The event horizon of your
You
butthole.
bloat up
Oh my
from all that nasty, but you're fed forever. And then when that, when that finally breaks
There's no
down a
longer
little bit.
any. Yeah, there's no more nutrients.
Well,
the thing that your grandmother always told you about four-armed emperors?
What was that?
Never shake their second left hand.
Because it's not a hand.
No, no,
that's
no, 'cause-
doo-doo,
'cause
baby.
Don't shake any of their hands. I don't know why she led with the second left hand, but unless you want to be armless, don't shake any of their hands. That's
Don't
the
shake
takeaway.
a forearm emperor's hand.
That's
Don't-
doo-doo,
never-
baby.
That's doo-doo, baby.
That's doo-doo, baby.
It's like foreign emperors poop on their hands so they can climb better.
Oh,
That's what gives them sticky
Chocolate
hands.
That's how they get it to stick.
Ready to climb.